So good afternoon if you are in the East Coast of the United States, and good evening if you are in Brescia or somewhere else in Europe, and good overnight if you are somewhere in the world, or good morning if this finds you there. I'm Fred Plotkin. Today is Friday, so this must be Fred Plotkin on Fridays on Adagio, the place where classical music happens. As you know, Adagio is a video and audio streaming platform dedicated to supporting artists and to making classical music and opera available to fans all around the world. My guest today is my friend Riccardo Frizza, the great Italian conductor, and I need to tell audiences that there is a slight delay. So what we're going to do is I will say something and pause, Riccardo will say something, I will pause. So if the conversation doesn't seem like a normal conversation between friends, you will understand. But Riccardo, welcome.
Hello, Fred. How are you? It is nice to meet you, to see you here.
Excellent. So Riccardo is from Brescia in northern Italy, and you are in Brescia right now. And I don't know if you know this, but I know Brescia very well. I like Brescia a lot. And it's one of the many Italian cities that I go to that tourists don't go to, but I like it very much. Would you talk about growing up in Brescia and very specifically the beautiful Teatro Grande?
Yes. Look, I don't live in Brescia exactly in the city. I live just like 6 miles south in the town zone. It's between Brescia and Cremona. It's a village from the city of Brescia and Cremona. You know, Brescia and Cremona, they are just half an hour by car. And it's a countryside, very green, but also very humid during the summer. But for me, I, I travel around the world the whole year. It's very important to come back in this area because it's very central. You know, Brescia is in the center of the northern Italy. So we can go eastern or western very easily. I have a lot of airports around my city. We have Verona, we have Bergamo in 50 kilometers, Milan 40 minutes by car. So geographically it's very easy to move. We have the high-speed train, so it's very connected with many other cities. For example, yesterday, 2 days ago, I got a concert in Bologna.
So Riccardo, I'm going to interrupt. Come a little closer or come closer to the microphone.
Okay. So, and I did a concert 2 days ago in Bologna. I took the train in 1 hour and 50 minutes. I was at home. But Brescia is it's a city that is not too big, but it's not too small. It's a medium-sized Italian city and very rich city because it's very industrial. Even if we have many cultural aspects that I can introduce to your audience if they don't know, but you know that I probably you know my city better than me with them. But we have this beautiful Teatro Grande. Teatro Grande it's like a little bit smaller than La Scala, same size, same uh, style of the film, very beautiful with a great foyer, great foyer, and it's a city where I did my studies at the beginning, and after I moved to Milan to study composition and conducting. But I could never change my place to live because it's very comfortable and it's quiet. So I love it.
Now I'm going to talk about Brescia a bit because I'm very fond of it. It was founded by the Romans as Brixia, and the Romans liked to establish towns and cities in places that were commercially viable. So as you said, it sits between Verona, Venice on one side, and Milan and Torino on the other side. And there's, I believe it's the highway, the A4, that goes straight across northern Italy. And there are the fast trains that go from Trieste all the way to Torino, stopping always in Brescia. And exactly. The stop before is Desenzano, which is on Lake Garda. What you didn't mention is that the western shore of the province of Brescia is Lake Garda. And some of the best sparkling wines in the world come from the western slope of Lake Garda. There's a little town, I wonder if you've ever been there, called Dello, Dello. And Dello has a fantastic bakery that the founders loved opera. So that
Yes.
about 150 years ago, they started collecting costumes and objects from opera. So in addition to making some of the best panettone in all of Italy, they also have this opera collection. And I'm a friend of one of the family, and he lives in New York now, and he loves opera.
Really?
And music is very much a part of Brescia. And it's just another one of those cities that most people don't think to go to. But the Teatro Grande, as you said, has a beautiful foyer. It's a beautiful theater. And every autumn, there's something called the Circuito Lombardo, the Lombard Circuit. Not Milan, but cities such as Como and Cremona and Pavia, and sometimes Novara, which is in Piemonte, sometimes Piacenza, which is in Emilia. They get together and they produce opera productions that tour among the cities. And when you go to in the autumn to an opera at the Teatro Grande, people are better dressed than La Scala. I think because it's a provincial, in the good sense, provinciale thing, that you really dress up beautifully for the opera. And Brescia has beautiful bakeries and restaurants and bars and cafes. As you said, it is a wealthy city. It was built on armaments in the Middle Ages. And unfortunately, a lot of the guns and cannons that have killed millions of people in Europe were produced in Brescia. So we try to not continue that. But it's a very welcoming city. It's a city that has managed immigration better than most of Italy, and people who are from North Africa and the Middle East work in factories and are socially accepted and belonging there. And it
Yes.
has a lot of beautiful architecture. There's a lot to love in Brescia.
Yes. No, you asked me about Dello. Dello, little village that is exactly next to mine.
Ah,
So if I look out of the window, I can see Dello. But I want to tell you something about Dello. I'm sure that you know, but Dello is a three little, we say frazioni, so little part of the of the of the village, and they do the casoncelli. Casoncelli is like it's like ravioli. In this area, in Brescia, are also in Bergamo, are called casoncelli because it's homemade, raviolis. And Dello is a very small village, but it's three frazioni, and they do battles where for the best casoncelli, Barbariga, Mairano, and Longhena, the three fractions of the village. And really, you can have the best ravioli of your life. And look, we go very often there, and when I travel, I buy it and I frozen, and also I come to New York with the casoncelli because they are spectacular. I next time when I come to the Met, I will bring for you casoncelli homemade from Brigida.
Thank you. So I know you're coming to the Met. We'll talk about this later next spring to conduct a new production of Lucia di Lammermoor.
Exactly.
With Nadine Sierra and Javier Camarena. But let's stick to Brescia a bit. You were the conductor as a very young man of the Orchestra Sinfonica, Symphonic Orchestra of Brescia. And therefore, your beginnings were really not with opera, but with symphonic music. And were you not interested in opera? Did you not know or see opera? How did you make the switch to opera when you finally did in about 2000?
Look, as you know, this is a provincial city. So there is not an orchestra. And in 1995, I was 24. I won't take conducting seriously, but there was no any opportunity for me to conduct. So I said the best way is to found an orchestra. So I found an orchestra on my own, and I was, yeah, in my early 20s. I was going to all these industries and all little factories here asking for money, to sponsor the orchestra. And thank also a lady that's a friend of my family. She's an entrepreneur, very important entrepreneur here in Brescia. So she has many connections. She helped me a lot to go to for the fundraising. It was in the late 90s. So I started very early with this, and I think that's also a school for me because, go to the orchestra when you're professional, you go there and you conduct, but you don't know what is behind. So I grew up knowing what that means to make the copy of the parts, mounting the stands for the musician, prepare the chairs, and mounting the stage. I did everything on my own at the beginning because just, this, I really want to conduct and there was no any opportunity here for me. So in this orchestra got a 15 years life until I start my professional international career. I couldn't really manage it anymore. And unfortunately, there was nobody able to take care about that because I was the factotum.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the orchestra disappeared, but it was very important for my career. I did the complete Beethoven Symphony, Schumann Symphony, the late Mozart Symphony. So my career started as a symphonic conductor. And very late, the opera was a very late law for me. When they met Juan Diego in around 2000, 2001.
Juan Diego Flores.
Exactly. And he did his first recital with the orchestra in Fano. Fano is a city close to just after the festival. He was a very young tenor. So the promise, the promessa, but was not like today, of course. But this is because I've been asked to conduct this concert. It was his first recital with orchestra. It was my first opportunity to conduct some arias. And I did it quite well because that night there was so many of the Italian theater, artistic direction of the theater, listening the tenor. Mm-hmm. They also discovered a conductor. So that night I took 4 contracts. My first contract in Opera di Roma, in Bologna, in Pesaro, and I started like that.
So Fano, I don't know if everyone heard you, but Fano is a town just south of Pesaro. Pesaro is in the Marche, but very close to Romagna. This is Rossini country. And Rossini was born in Pesaro, but moved to Bologna and studied in Bologna at the same school I studied at, and learned to eat in Bologna and became a lot of the man who he was because of Bologna primarily. And Pesaro has this wonderful opera festival that began in 1984. Claudio Botto conducted the first production, which was Il Viaggio a Reims, directed by Luca Ronconi. And I had worked at La Scala before that, so Botto had me come and work on this first production. And it was there that I met a wonderful man who you surely knew named Alberto Zedda.
Alberto Zedda was my mentor, was the person that after that night invited me to go to Pesaro. And the festival 2001, I did my debut in Pesaro, conducting Stabat Mater, Rossini Stabat Mater. There wasn't previously scheduled to do, but after he said, I cannot wait another more here to have you in Pesaro. So he had an extra concert at the end of the festival, in Coda al festival. And so I did my debut that 2001 summer. So it's 20 years from now. And so I got this opportunity to conduct, but Zedda was the first person that gave me any opportunity. Him and Bruno Cagli. It was was at Santa Cecilia. Was the president of Accademia Nazionale Santa Cecilia, but also in 2001, he was the artistic director of the first Verdi Festival in Parma. It was the centenario, the first century of Verdi there. So I did my double debut in June in Parma and in August in Pesaro. So I was the most important international windows at the time. I started my career like that because after that I went everywhere. I went to London, I went to France, I did my debut in Germany. Because that period, when Juan Diego, Daniela Barcelona, was Ildar, Abrazaco, with the new stars, upcoming stars, every single theater during the August was coming to Pedro to listen to new voices.
Mm-hmm.
So they discovered that.
So a couple of things. Daniela Barcelona will be my guest next week.
Yeah, I
So,
talked with her today. We
oh,
got
good.
a chat today. Yes.
She and I are very old good friends. The other thing is that you and I have never discussed this, but in 2002 in Pesaro, you conducted Rossini's Il Turco in Italia. And we were talking about Alberto Zedda. And as you know very well, he was a mentor and a teacher and a very kind man. And there were a group of us who were not conductors, but who worked as directors and coaches and so on. And he would assign each one of us an opera to study. And then we would have time with Maestro Zedda to talk about the opera and go through the score. And as it happens, my opera was Il Turco in Italia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, but that would have been about 1997, 1998. So that means that the score that I worked on, you then conducted in 2002, yes. But I didn't know you then.
Yes, I wrote. After the festival, after the Stabat Mater in 2001, Alberto came to me and said, I give you an opera next year because we deserve to do it. And he said, look, Turco in Italia is still available. We don't have the conductor. Are you interested? I said, yes. But he told me, look, Turco in Italia is one of the most difficult Rossini's opera. Because he said, it's going up and after it's going down. It's going up, it's going down. It's not like the other biggest opera like Cenerentola, Opera Verde, it's a big, the structure is perfect. The tension you create in the opera, stay there, stay high. No, you have the recitativo and after nice aria, sorbetto aria, and and not all the music is by Rossini. This is Tadolini, there is so many other. So he said it's very difficult, but I did it. I think I did it quite well. Focus was my first time. Alberto was very, very happy. And because he knew that it was very complicated. And also, in that season, 2002, they did an experiment to do a new orchestra called Rossini, Sinfonica Rossini. It was a pickup orchestra with the old people of the area around Pesaro, Romagna, and Marche. And maybe the quality was not enough for this kind of festival. So I pay just probably this tribute to this orchestra. But now it's a good orchestra because Sinfonica Rossini, after 20 years, they did a good job. They made selection. They grew up as an orchestra. But the time wasn't easy. So it wasn't an easy moment for me. But, being there and studying with Alberto and with him was very, very important for my life.
I think, and we have to figure this out, but I think that you and I met in 2006 in Washington. So not in Italy, but in Washington, where you were making your debut at the Washington National Opera, conducting L'Italiana in Algeri.
Yes, it was 2006.
I think so, yeah.
Or before, yeah. Probably, I don't remember, but yes, could be.
And I didn't know you, I didn't know who you were, but I came, to tell you the truth, to hear Olga Borodina, who was singing Isabella, and there was Juan Diego Flores and Ildar Abdrazakov. It was a great cast. But I hope she's not listening. This is a positive thing, but Olga Borodina does not immediately suggest a Rossini singer and someone with a sense of humor. I may be wrong, but she's a very serious, very professional, very fine artist. She was one of the best Isabellas, for the very simple reason that she took the comedy seriously. So every moment she was not trying to be funny.
Exactly.
And in not trying to be funny, she was very funny.
Exactly, because the character is not a funny character. She's a strong lady. And she did it perfectly. I think I did so many Italianas. I want to say it's difficult to say, but also for me, she was the best Isabella I got in my productions because the beauty of the voice, of course, and the way she sings, and well, fantastic mezzo soprano. But also because she's a great actress, and in this kind of character, she was doing it really, as you said, seriously, because Isabella is a strong lady, has to go there, and she started to lead and manage everything what's going around. The buffo is Taddeo in Italiana, you
Hmm.
know. And also, Mustafa is not a buffo. Mustafa is just stupid.
Yeah,
Is a person with no culture, with a different culture. So at our highs, is funny, but it's not funny. The buffo there is Taddeo,
yeah.
the real basso buffo that has to act like a buffo. I do agree with you.
Um,
Totally.
it's one of my very favorite operas, which is another reason I travel to see it. I think it's very undervalued. I prefer it as a comedy to Il Barbiere di Siviglia, to all the Rossini comedies. It's my favorite, but also because it was written in 1813, in other words, the year that both Wagner and Verdi were born. And Europe was completely at war. Italy was partially under France, partially under Austria, partially under Spain. Italy was completely divided. There was no nation of Italy. The Risorgimento, the resurgence had not yet happened, led by Verdi and Rossini, I believe. And this was an example of an Italian, a woman in this case, being completely resourceful and able to surmount any challenge. And there's the famous aria in the second act, Pensa alla patria, think of your homeland. Now, I just know that Italian audiences during the wars of the second part of second decade of the 19th century understood what Rossini was saying to them completely. And although, yes, there are comedy moments in it, it's not silly.
Yep.
And she was like the Statue of Liberty in being a symbol of everything Italian to
You're right.
Italian audiences. And it premiered in Venice, and the Venetians were under Austrian domination.
You know, the libretto is from Anelli, that's from Brescia, from the Desenzano del Garda.
Ah, okay. um, so therefore, you have become, many people say to me you're a Rossini specialist, others say you're a Bellini specialist, others say you're a Donizetti specialist, you're the music director of the Donizetti Festival in Bergamo. These are all bel canto composers, but they're all different. And conductors I know who approach bel canto the same way, it's very boring. Would you talk about the differences in approach as a conductor that you apply for Rossini, Donizetti, and Bellini?
Yes, it's difficult to explain it, but I will try. And also, they say that I'm a virgin conductor because I did 22 operas of 27. So the most composer I did I conduct was is Verdi. But I have this special relation with bel canto probably because I love the voice. I fall in love with the human voice. Also, probably after I married my wife, she's a soprano, so an opera singer. So I understand much more now, about voice and what that means singing, balsamic, vocal issues. So my approach to this composer are different, but also is different because depends who's singing. For example, if I do Lucia with Nadine Sierra, I don't do the same Lucia if I do with Jessica Pratt, for example, because bel canto is written for every composer was writing operas for this and that singer. They knew before who's the interpreter. So you cannot have one approach. You have to be, to work and build the character on the voice you have, and the voice are all different. For example, when I did Armida at the Met with Renee Fleming, she sang in 92 in Pesaro. Well, of course, when we did in 2010, she wasn't the same singer. More mature, the voice was changing. She did many Strauss, many different repertoire. So the voice is not the same when she was 20 and something. So we built the whole character on her voice. So this is my approach. Of course, any composer are different. Bellini is different from Donizetti, and Donizetti is different from Bellini and from Rossini. And you know, if you do Bellini, it's like floating. You know, you have to build something that's stay in the air. If you play Donizetti, it's more concrete. The scene of Donizetti, the great tragedy, if you do the Three Queens, or if you do Marino Faliero, this kind of operas, they are very dramatic. You are more close to Verdi. In fact, we always give we say that Verdi is discover and change a lot of the Italian repertoire, but that is not really true. It was Donizetti. The only problem that Donizetti is not so well known. What we did, and that's thanks also the opera with the Donizetti Opera Festival that we are doing. We try to, take out what really Donizetti did from the 30 after Lucia. I can say from the 35 to 1847 when he was already in these 10, 12 years, he did a great job. For example, when we discovered about Marino Faliero, the finale of the opera is very similar to the Boccanegra trio, final trio.
Yes.
And it's more than 25 years between one and the other one. So he was very forward with the ideas, with the dramaturgy, because Donizetti is a great dramaturg, And Rossini is totally different. Rossini is a classic composer. This is writing in a romantic time, so it's completely out of the era. When you approach this, you have to be careful to create the right sound, the right expression, to work with the singers and try to find the real style in different composer. But always having focusing on the kind of voice you have.
Mm-hmm.
Always. We did Somnambula, a new production in Paris with Pretty Ender. And we did the production and we're going to the Met in 2024 with Rolando Villason was doing the staging direct. And we did the complete opera. And I was working with Pretty and doing every single note, every single line, every single word, anything, reading the detail to create this big character that's coming just if you work with every phrase, but with her voice that is different than Nathalie Dessay's voice, that is different than any other, than Gruberova. She's more lyrical, she's more dark brown voice. So you have always to consider the singers. This is my approach to Belcanto.
Pretty Yende is a marvelous singer, and I've only spoken to her a couple of times, never like this, but just privately we've spoken. And as you know, I studied at La Scala. She did all of her training at La Scala. And yes, she's a product of the La Scala approach, which they have a wonderful conservatory and school, the Accademia della Scala, that not only teaches singing and acting and so forth, but they have a school of ballet, they have a school of direction, they have a school of costume making, everything about opera and yes, orchestral playing is at the La Scala Academy. And people who do a good job there, and it's very difficult once you're there, really are outstanding. And to me, when I watch her, and I mean this in the best way, she's completely a product of the La Scala education.
Well, I can testify something. We did do Chip More together in Paris Opera some years ago. She was doing the role for the first time. She told me also in an interview, so I can say in public. The day she came, the first day at the music rehearsal with me, I was totally not, don't say happy, but they said, oh, it will be complicated to do in Paris here with her. It's not ready. I was thinking, this was my thought. It's not ready. Musically, it's too cold. This was the first day. So I tried to work with her and very few reaction. So in the afternoon, I was with her. I said, look, or she trusts or she has to leave. They spoke with her and they say, I really a real trust in the maestro. So we started working. Every single night after the med scene at the Paris Opera, standing ovation, 7, 8 minutes. Every single night. It was impossible to finish the opera. It was the tenor up there waiting for singing the last aria. It was impossible to. I'm talking about Pretty great artist, great singer.
Yeah, she really is.
It was the first time doing something important out of La Scala, the Academy of La Scala. So big role, big theater, Bastille was almost to the like to singing at the Met, and she was very young. And she did a great job. And
I'm going to say I helped them design the theater, not the outside, but the stage at the Paris Opera. And I can say, because I believe this, the acoustics are good. The acoustics at the Met are much better. I don't know if that's your opinion.
My opinion is that I'm talking about the big opera houses like Met. Yes. The Met is the best acoustic ever. There's no another place like the acoustic of the Met.
So I was thinking about something.
There is a reason. Sorry to interrupt you. There is a reason, in my opinion, because the pitch of the pitch of the Met is not very deep. The orchestra is quite the same level of the audience. This is very important. So you have the right balance with the stage always. This is
the pit has a lift that can go down. So if you're doing Wagner or Strauss Electra, something like that, you can lower it and therefore adjust it. The Met is remarkable for that. I was thinking about something. You have conducted certain operas in the theaters where they were composed for, if you know what I mean. I immediately comes to mind Semiramide, that we'll talk about in a bit. But when you're conducting in the theater where the opera was composed for, is that different? Do you think differently about the approach?
Yes. Wow, this is a very, very interesting question, because I did in Venice, I did Semiramide, but I did also Attila. I did also La Traviata. My first Traviata was in Venice. You know how many offers I got from Traviata? So many. I always said, no, I want to do it in Venice for the first time. When I did this kind of opera in this theater, they are written for this theater, with this dimension, with this stage, with this pitch. Everything is going perfectly in alone. You have not to do anything. Just go there and conduct. Right balance, proportions, no problem with synchro between pit and stage and chorus, distances, nothing. Everything is working perfectly. I was really amazed when I did it, but also when I go to Venice, I go to listen Traviata. They do always Traviata every season. And you sit down there and you listen to the Preludio, how it's going in this acoustic, because La Fenice acoustic is amazing. You like how alone, is unbelievable. It's a miracle. Some way it's a miracle. But doing the operas in the place where we've written is always much easier.
James Levine, with whom I worked a lot, I worked at the Met when he was in charge, was very generous in talking to people like me if we wanted to learn things or ask him questions. And I had the opportunity on many occasions to get 10 minutes to ask him a question. And so the question would be 30 seconds and the answer would be 9 minutes and 30 seconds. And I asked him a version of what I just asked you. And he said that his favorite example was Parsifal in Bayreuth, that he had conducted Parsifal in Bayreuth. And what he tried to do was to take the sound that he heard in Bayreuth for Parsifal and bring it to other theaters. So do you take the sound of La Traviata that you hear in Venice and try to take that sound to other theaters? And if you do, how do you do that?
Yes, but unfortunately, the sound that you can bring with you and you try to do in another theater, you get the same impression from the pit. But unfortunately, outside never will be the same. You know, and sometimes, for example, when I did Traviata in Peralada, the Festival de Peralada in Spain, Catalonia, I did it with the same sound I got to La Fenice. But for example, the review, the critics said that the orchestra was too tiny, it was not so present. Because they were expecting something different. But it's the sound I was bringing with me from Venice. You are totally right. Maybe it's not always the best idea to do it. Parsifal probably yes, because making the balance between voices in the orchestra when you have so big orchestra, more than 19 people. So if you have that idea, it's always would be for sure would be helpful. But when you do the most Italian opera and 19th century opera, is probably is not the best way to do it.
Yes, because he took out the score and he showed me where arrest would be. And in Bayreuth, arrest could be a lot longer. It could be, as the Germans say, Ewigkeit, eternity. Whereas arrest in Donizetti is really just sort of catch your breath and keep going, I would think. It's not a dramatic rest, it's a rest for the singer, for her to breathe a bit. So my next question is, I think the last time you and I were together in the same place was in October of 2018. And I was in Venice with my friend Myra, and I was supposed to come do a talk about Rossini. And I was invited to the final dress rehearsal of Semiramide. I sat all the way in the back row. And at the interval, at the pausa, someone came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, Maestro Frizza wants to see you. Now, you were in the orchestra pit. Maybe you turned around, maybe among the 600 people in the theater, you saw me in the back. I'm surprised. You may have eyes in the back of your head. You may have spies in the theater. How did you know that I was there? Because then I came to your dressing room after with Myra and we had a lovely visit. How did you know I was there?
When Fred Plotkin moved to Italy, everybody knows. It wasn't difficult because, this Fred Plotkin is here. Oh, really? It's a friend of mine. So please come to visit. I want to say hello to him. I was told about by the theater, by the press office of the theater.
I see, because I try to come quietly, anonymously. I don't make a scene of myself, and I just try to be there as a colleague. Because of my work schedule, I was working in Milan. I didn't have a chance to come to a performance of Semiramide, and it is one of my very favorite operas. And it's really in my top 10, certainly. And I feel that we wouldn't have Aida if we didn't have Semiramide, for example. And one of the selections that you gave for listeners for Adagio is from Semiramide. I think it's one of the hardest operas to stage. I can tell you my perspective. What's it like to conduct Semiramide? It's long, it's very complicated.
Semiramide is lasting almost like Maestro Singer. It's 4.5 hour music. But it's just 2 acts. So you have 1 intermission. And the first act is 2 hours, 20 minutes.
That's the length of Das Rheingold.
Exactly. So 2 hours, 20 minutes first act is lasting as Trovatore dell'Opera. You know what I mean? So probably the duration is the most complicated thing to sustain concentration because there are so many recitativi accompagnati. And that technically it's the most challenging to keep the not the concentration for you, but to keep the orchestra concentration up, because the the for minutes and minutes and minutes. So listen, concentrate. That is very probably is the most challenging thing, is to keep up the orchestra concentration. And after when we start with the numbers, long arias and cabaletta and finale, that is not so. That's more conductor stuff. It's not orchestra stuff. They play and they go. But stopping at the end of the number and starting the recitativo and keep up the tension, that's for me the most complicated thing. Also, I remember once with Carlo Rizzi, colleague of mine, that at the beginning of my career, I was following him to learn, just to learn something. And he said to me, look, I conduct everything by heart, but the only thing I can't do is the semiramide recitativi. And when he did it in Pesaro, he was conducting without score, but he prepared a score just of the recitativi, because they are so similar, but so different. They sound almost the same, but they are not the same. So you can really, your brain can really switch from one to another. And also the singers, they be confused with the words. And if you change one word, you can go in another point of the opera. That's very wrong. So that is very challenging, but I love it. I love it. It's one of the most, Semiramis, especially that you have been with the Myra. I really have in my heart, because for me it was one of the best. I did it in my career. I did 5, but doing it in Venice is different. No,
Yeah,
for an artist to be able to do Semiramide, it was missing from 1985 from Venice with Marilyn Horn. So
I worked on that one.
It was missing so many years.
Yeah.
So, and the theater gave it to me the opportunity to do it.
Yep. 1985 for me was a great summer. I worked in Rome, Venice, and Salzburg. And it was one of the hottest summers in Europe in memory. And it was hotter in Salzburg than either Venice or Rome. But it was such a great year for music. I think of music the way I think of wine, that 1985 was a very good vintage for Opera Rosso or Opera Bianco, because the singers were great. Everybody was prepared. A lot of people were preparing for the Rossini bicentennial and learning music. So we were not just getting Barbieri di Siviglia, but we were getting a lot of these unusual operas outside of Pesaro. We were seeing them in Austria, for example. In Germany, we were seeing unusual Rossini operas. And the Met started adding more, in San Francisco, and these great singers, led by Marilyn Horne, but also June Anderson and many, many others, were out there singing, and Sam Raimi, all of this great Rossini. At the Met, when we did Semiramide with him, we called it Sam Raimi Day, because he was extraordinary in that, in everything, but his Rossini is remarkable. Because I know you have to go, because conductors are busy, I want to ask you a question I've never asked you. You grew up in Brescia, and the most famous musical figure in Brescia is Arturo Benedetti Michelangelo, the pianist. And there's a piano festival in both Brescia and Bergamo. I have a dear friend, Elena, maybe you know her, who's very active in musical affairs in Brescia. But he was sort of a mysterious figure. We didn't know too much about his life. We knew that he liked driving fast Italian cars, and that his hands on the volante, on the steering wheel, at 10 and 2, he loved fast cars, which we don't think of too many conductors, musicians, singers with fast cars. A few of them. Ferruccio Furlaneto likes his cars, but for the most part, he seems so serious, so sobrio. so in a way like other Italian, very serious, saintly musicians. And then he lived in Switzerland and he died in Switzerland. And there's a lot of mystery around him, the way around Carlos Kleiber and around Herbert von Karajan, there was a certain mystery. Did you ever hear him? Did you ever meet him?
No, I never met him, but I studied with his nephew, Umberto. He's a young conductor, young. It was young when I was student. Of course, he's older than me. So I was close to the family with him. Yeah, I know many things because him. But in Brescia, for any young student of piano students go to the conservatory, the figure of Benedetti Michelangeli is like, the
God.
phantom of the opera. Because when it was my classroom was in the Torretta. Torretta is a part of the conservatory, because the conservatory of Brescia is very, very old building. So we're talking about 6th, 7th century. So it's like a tower. In this tower, there was a piano, a very old Bechstein. It's still there. He was closing himself in the night in this room, playing and studying the whole night. And that was my room where I took lesson of piano for many years. So every time I was walking to the stairs of the Torretta, you have this figure, in front of you and thinking, you're a young student. And of course, we have a festival dedicated, that was invented by him in the 60s. And now it's not taking his name anymore because many problems with the family. They didn't want to. Anyway, so many private personal reasons that I don't want to tell here. But what's very important for the cultural life of the city, because we got music thanks to the festival. Because other than the Circuito Lombardo that you mentioned before, so very few operas in the autumn, early winter, there is nothing, or there was nothing. Now, but the figure of Benedetti Michelangeli, of me, it was one of the best, if not the best ever pianist. We have many of students that they start a school, the piano school in our city. In fact, we have many young players that are really going very well. And for example, Federico Colli. Federico Colli is a young pianist that won some very important competition. He's doing a great career, and his teacher was also my teacher. We're coming from the Michelangelo school, so we can continue this tradition. And his idea of making music to respect, because what did Michelangelo do in the 30s and the 40s was respecting the score. And his philosophy was to understand exactly the meaning of these notes and this fourth legato and this sign on the score, to be very respectful. And I grew up with this idea. It is exactly what I'm doing also now, respecting the score and do Rossini as it's written and do Donizetti as it's written. And not made do, especially in the opera, the score have been, I don't say destroyed, but there's been many variations,
Yes.
In the story. And thank also to Alberto Zeta. That's we have to say always that. Thanks to Alberto Zeta, they start this school in Pesaro. And now we have so many Rossinian singers. Because in the 80s, there was Marilyn Horne, it was Simon Remy, it was June Anderson, but were not so many. But now you can do, it's very easy to go and to listen to the Lago. But in the 80s was an event. In the 60s, can you imagine the 60s was just Barbiere and Italiana and maybe Turco. Cenerentola,
not so
after
much.
Frica was started, after her. So we are already in the 70s. So that's what we're seeing, 3 titles. And now, listen Maometto or listen Del Lago or going to listen Mosè. It's very common. And that's thanks to Alberto. And that's what we want to do in Bergamo for Donizetti, because he deserves it.
So I have one last question, because I know you have to go. In the late 1990s, I had a work contract for a company where I worked a lot with the conductor Anton Guadagno, who was from Sicily. And he was very old school, and I mean that in the best way. And he didn't, I'm going to say this politely, didn't trust anyone who was not from Sicily. Never mind
Okay.
Italy, just Sicily. And even though I spoke Italian and worked in Italian theaters for a long time, he was a little suspicious of me until I cooked for him and his wife, Dolores, one night. And then they said, oh, if he can make pasta alla norma, he may be okay. And then he started giving me advice and counsel as a much older colleague. And he said, I'll say it in Italian and then I'll translate. Devi sempre fare il maestro in un modo in cui dirigi italianamente. In other words, you have to be a conductor in a way that you conduct Italianly would be the word, italianamente. And I've always carried that word around with me, and I don't take it out very often to talk about and to play with. But I think that even though you're from Brescia and he was from Sicily, he would say that you conduct italianamente. Does that word mean anything to you, italianamente? It's okay if it doesn't.
No, I think there is a, yeah, I met him, I was very young. I was maybe 14 or 15. I saw him conducting in Brescia, a Carmen, in the big square, Piazza della Loggia. It was a concert, you know? So I saw him once conducting. But the thing, italianamente, probably you have to conduct singing the line. When you see also in Brahms, cantabile, it means singing, was the Italian way, was the operatic way. So even so, you conduct the fourth symphony of Brahms, or you conduct Mahler, you see cantabile, you have to sing. So in the Italian way, probably I do agree with this word that you can apply in the music many times when you have a melody, of course.
I've never heard anyone else use that word, but I carry it with me. As I said, I think about it every so often. I remember that he was very stern. He was very, not serious in the sense of Arturo Benedetti Michelangelo, but very direct and firm, I think is the word, in his opinion, in his approach, in his outlook. He was not particularly interested in the way other people did things. That's not a criticism, it's just a fact. And yet, italianamente is a very strong, good word.
Yes. No, I like it. Italianamente, so alla maniera italiana. Italianamente, we can translate alla maniera italiana. Maniera italiana. What is the maniera italiana? Singing. You know, because opera comes from, it's a long story, but you can assume that it comes from Napoli, from the folk song from Napoli. And so this way to sing, to phrase, to be, to be espressivo, italianamente, that's me. I'm sure.
So,
meaning that Anton Guadagno was giving to us.
In the spring, when you were in New York, we're going to eat casoncelli italianamente.
Of course, I do go.
I'll bring the wine.
Good. Great.
Okay. Thank you, Riccardo.
Thank you, Fred. It was
a wonderful visit, and keep up the good work. And we look forward to having you back in New York in the spring.